And when I say hold yourself, I want all of you to get ready to stop. When I say stop, don't move. And when I say get it, I want all of y'all to go. Hold it now. Boogie woogie. Stop. Boogie woogie.
One.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Discover RPG, where Logan and Angela, myself, talk about D&D and RPGs and chat and find lots of cool, fun things to work on together. And
Puppy.
we talk to you, our beautiful chat. And Logan, can you change the title of our stream so that no one thinks we're Countless Heroes, episode 118?
Why don't you click refresh and it will change automatically?
It's magic. You're so good at this.
I know.
All right.
Because you're not the only one that complains about that. But I'm like, it is true.
Well, it's not our fault we came to the stream early in anticipation.
Super. Thank you.
Thank you, Secondhand Samurai. We always start the dance party early. If we should wait a little later, let us know.
Me too. One early, one after. We start every stream. Every stream that we do, we always start with a dance party. It's ridiculous.
Let me see here. Now we're good. Okay.
It's the playful banter portion.
It is. It's very full of banter, and it's very playful. How are you doing today, Logan?
I'm good. It has been a long week with a lot of very exciting news.
Right?
We've added new people to the show. We're enhancing our relationship with some of our sponsors. There's been so much good.
Yeah, which we'll probably
touch on
talk about
later. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Speaking of talking later, before we get too crazy, should we get into our little review?
Sure. Yeah, let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. You know, a nice meta conversation, because communication is important. Meta conversations are important sometimes. All right, so if you see in the middle of our screen, beloved viewers, you will see our session plan. I think I was pointing the wrong direction. It's on that side of my screen. Anyway, so here is a quick review of what we will be attempting to talk about in totality today.
Good work. Lower expectations.
We will do our best. All right, so first one surprised me because I didn't know it existed until Logan put it on our plan for today. Taking the piss. Logan, would you like to explain to the viewers what that's about?
I'm not going to explain much because we'll be getting into it very soon, but I'm just going to say it has to do with a very, very bad house rule. That's I like starting out with something with a little bit of levity to it, and I scour the internet looking for the worst house rules out there. This one is pretty bad, so we'll get to that here in a second. Then after that, we go on to the guilt trip, shove, disarm, talking about guiltiness at the table and feeling guilty as a DM and as a player. Then All Systems Go is...
All Systems Go, we are going to field a question from our fellow Nerdsmith creator, Matthew Siebert, who we're adapting a little bit of a question that he had, and we're going to talk about applying other RPG system mechanics into your D&D 5e campaign. As we've often said, D&D 5e is where a lot of our frame of reference is, just because that's what we're currently running, and we know a lot of y'all play D&D, so that'll be interesting. We'll talk about some of the things we like in different systems and how you can incorporate them to spice up your game a little bit, or maybe find a way to do something better than 5e does it. Then we have Taming of the Brew, our first of 2 attempted Taming of the Brews today. We have the Malady Codex, which is a really fabulous, interesting homebrew for magical and mundane illnesses and diseases. We will try to keep it as safe for work as possible, not get too into any sort of, let's call them biological descriptions if it gets a little too grody for some people.
I won't get into too much of that.
But we will be talking about the Malady Codex. I'll put a link when we start talking about that. Actually, I'll put it right now.
Then we're going to talk about Power Spike, which we'll talk a little bit. We were supposed to talk about last week, and I think even the week before, maybe, I don't remember. And talking about player balance and D&D and balance and stuff. It comes off of a conversation we had either last week or 2 weeks ago.
Or yesterday. We also talked about it yesterday.
About fourth edition, having a really good balance being one of the things that we liked about fourth edition, or I liked about fourth edition. Or at least
I have little opinion.
But also, it was a negative. And we'll talk about that. And then we go to Too Cool for Chul, which talks about the rule of cool. And we have some one particular example that we wanted to talk about. And then we go on to our second Taming of the Brew, Brewster's Millions, where we're going to talk about
Arcanotech spell bombs, which I thought was super neat. So we're going to talk a little bit about those. And I will also pull those up on DMs Guild and put those as soon as I can.
Yes. And then from there, we're going to probably do the dance party and get out of here. But after we end this show at 2 o'clock PST, we're going to take a short break for lunch and in 1 hour or dinner. And in 1 hour after that, we're going to come back and we're going to do another stream. We're going to do our first trial run of a world building stream. That's going to be an extension of this show, where we're going to use and show people how to use a little bit World Anvil. And we're going to work on building our worlds. Today, we're going to be working on some maps for Countless Heroes, and probably working on some of the NPCs for Countless Heroes as well. We'll be working and talking and chatting. We have no idea how this is going to go, but you can come along for that and check us out. That'll also be on the video on demands as well. So,
sounds like a full and prosperous day of activities.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you all for joining us.
Yes, thank you for being here. Really appreciate that. Alrighty, so back to Playful Banter. So what else is going on?
I drew a lot of delightful pictures yesterday during stream.
You did.
I'm very proud of them.
I love what you're doing, and I love that you've that you have kind of adapted your version of a quirk from one of the players of Critical Role Season 1, and started to put things on the bottom of your mug.
Yes,
hilarious
I did.
To me, because it is completely unexpected every time I look up.
So a little behind the scenes. The reason that I'm doing that partly is because we don't have a sponsorship with the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. I might just try to take some acetone to take it off. But
I think what you're doing is good.
I'm gonna keep doing the post-its, but I might take off the Wizarding World of Harry Potter off the bottom. But yeah, so that's where that came from. Other than that, we've been working a lot on Discover and lots of stream projects we've been doing. So that's busy. I guested on a stream yet.
Oh, yeah.
God, that was yesterday.
So that was yesterday. I know, right? It's like that was yesterday. You were in 2 shows yesterday.
Whew.
So that was over on
that was on Susanna Grace's channel.
Grace's channel, yes. And she is really wonderful. She does a lot of
Susanna Grace
stuff.
is awesome. And she has a bunch of different games that host on her channel that she doesn't necessarily run. She's a player in a few of them. And one of them is called Grains of Truth. It's a Witcher RPG game, which runs on every other Tuesday. So it was this Tuesday, and it'll be not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after that.
So good.
On the afternoon, in Eastern time zone afternoons. And it's run by Jason. Just Jason, who has been in some of our chats before.
He was so good. I was so impressed with it. Jason, the style that I have a hard time doing because there was a lot of detail to it. He was great for a one shot.
he knows the Witcher world like the back of his hand. He is so knowledgeable about it. Not to mention, when he was teaching me how to run the Witcher RPG, he kept busting into a Scottish accent because I'm playing a dwarf. So he's got that Scottish accent just down in the back of his brain, and he can just pull it out whenever he needs it. It's really impressive. Yes, I'm very impressed with his accent. I'm very, very impressed with his impersonation of a troll. Tough was the best thing I've ever seen.
Was a great troll. It was amazing.
I don't know if you've seen Logan. If you saw
get
it, Logan.
Tough and Tugnut to meet.
Pugnut? Pugnut and Tough?
Yeah, but
it's been a while. I don't know if you noticed, but when he started playing Tough the troll, he was like doing the whole, he's bouncing, he's like banging his fists on the ground and stuff, and Jason like legit had drool coming out of his face. Like, he was that into it.
He gets into it. It was amazing. I was working, unfortunately I wasn't really watching, but I did catch it occasionally. It was really, really good. So yeah, that's just Jason. Oh man, and it's funny because I try to watch a lot of streams. I mean, I've tried to watch probably every D&D stream that's ever been out there, just because we look for more people to join Nerdsmith, and we're looking for also people we want to work with in different ways, and people who might want to be on our charity, and just looking for new ideas. And I would say about 90% of them, unfortunately, I have to turn off because I'm just like, I can't get into this, and I feel bad because I really I love their passion. But it needs to be entertaining, so it's got to grab me too. But Jason immediately, first paragraph grabbed me, and I was like, well, I'm watching this today. It's very rare that I watch an entire stream, and even if you're or somebody we know is on it, I do other things. It's hard to work while doing it, but no, it was perfect. Gotcha. I could pay attention and enjoy it, and I kept looking up and checking in on you guys. It was really good, so I was very impressed with it.
Well, one of the things that I think might just be a statement on the Witcher game, our Talasaurian Games are the people that make that game. One of the things that just really helped was when we did Arcana checks, essentially, and we rolled well, and someone would know something about the monster we were looking at. He had at his disposal in the manual a really nice colloquial like legend about the monster that he just read off the sheet. He just read it off the manual, but they were really well written. They were like, talking about, fearing the fog. The fog is a traveler's worst friend, but not because of the fog necessarily, but more so because of what is in the fog waiting for you. Like, there was this really neat, like very well written quotes in the manual that he decided to use as this is what you know about them. And it's this neat idea of it being sort of like traveler's tales. It's folk legends. It's that phrasing. The book is, the RPG's a little too crunchy for me, I think, in general. The fact that you need like basically 5 rolls to make 1 attack.
Yeah, it was a little bit much there, but he did it really well.
He did. And when you have somebody who, Jason said, I don't know the rules enough, and our Talasaurian Games like promotes our stream, and I don't know the rules well enough for that. But still, he knew how to push people through those scenes, and it worked really well. As someone who had no clue how to like play that game, like 3 weeks ago, he did a really good job introducing it. So I'm very much looking forward to that. We did a one shot because some of his players were under the weather. And so we were sort of playing backup, and he made it up. He just made a new storyline. It was that day he asked us to play. So much respect to Jason. He did a really, really good job.
Yeah, he did a really good job, and I hope that we should reach out and talk to him, because I'd love to work with him on something.
Absolutely. At minimum, have him here to talk to him a little bit. I would love to pick his brain.
Yes.
But yeah, Jason is already aware. Jason's already aware. I mentioned the show to him. I'm like, you definitely should be on here at some point. So we'll make that happen. And Susanna Grace. Susanna Grace is great.
So we're doing guests about once a month. Do you guys want to see more guests? Do you guys want to see us bring on more people more often and have these discussions? Let us know, because we're not sure what to do. We could easily have guests every other week, or even every week if we really wanted to.
I like our one-on-ones. I think every other week would be at most.
Second stream to do that with too.
Sure.
But yeah, every other week maybe. If you guys want to see more guests, let us know. But I did just come up with a great idea for another game. Not that I don't do this every day, because I just did this yesterday too. But that one's secret, I think. I don't remember what it was right now. That's why I take notes.
If you don't know, make it secret for now.
Yeah. But this one, was how I think I might end up running my one shots. Remember we talked about when Countless Heroes ends, we're going to take Countless Heroes, and we're not going to do probably another big game like that. We'll probably do several smaller games. Still be Countless Heroes, just with little subtitles, or with little titles, right? Yeah, subheaders, or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it'll be like Countless Heroes One Shot Wednesdays. Well, I was thinking a real cool way to do that would be tales from a caravan, like a major caravan on a major trade route, and how they take the adventurers and they go with adventurers to these places, and then we follow the tale of the adventurers along with these caravans. And it's always, it could be like right after the adventure, they're telling the story, or right before. I think that's a really neat idea, that all of the tales just kind of come from this one major caravan that goes on this trade route. Be kind of a cool way to do that Monster of the Week, or that single one-shot style. Anyway, it was neat idea. All right, well, should we get into this?
Yeah, sure. So, Logan, want to talk about that house rule you don't like, or that house rule you thought was hilarious enough to talk about?
So I'm always looking for unique house rules, and I've got lists and lists of them places. Most of them seem arbitrary. Most of them seem very much like they're not trying to improve the game, but trying to get one up on the players and show off that they have a little bit of power over the players as DMs. And this is one of them. So this one said that in character, you had to track all of your bodily functions. And if you did not tell the DM or have your tracker say that you were using the restroom or things, you could go literally days without going to the bathroom. And then the DM would just start imposing secret penalties because your tracker wasn't updated. And you just really had to use the bathroom. But for some reason, you don't consciously know. You're just like, gosh.
Or involuntarily soil yourself. Like, come on.
And I thought this was ridiculous. And I just wanted to share just kind of a lighthearted way to start off. And...
yeah, I will say on a slightly more critical note of that sort of mentality. I, for one, am a big proponent of the idea of giving players a little bit of hand-waving leeway when it comes to the everyday activities that person would do. And I say that because I come from a perspective of, we are ourselves. This is going to get a little metaphysical. We are us. We are ourselves in real life. We are portraying a character in a fictional world. If we were living that character's life, of course we would remember every little thing we were going to do and do those things. But we're not doing the mundane, most of the time. We are not playing the mundane parts of a story. We are playing the exciting adventure parts of a story, or the character building moments. We're not going to hit all those things, and so why fucking track everything? It's, unless you live by spreadsheets, I don't feel like that's a fun game for almost anybody. But if that is the game you want to play, if you want to track like that, go for it. Have fun. But like, at most, I do like if you were going to like a very hostile environment, a climate that you couldn't handle. Sure, track constitution, track your endurance of being able to handle that. If it's extreme, if you even care. So just make those decisions like that. But, oh man.
That's part, to me, all of that is part of the systems that are in place. Exhaustion and conditions and things. It's like, you're going to have these issues. Getting poisoned, or, food poisoning, or saying, getting, just the different conditions that are out there. Sicken. These things are already included in the system. You don't need to create these special rules breaks for it, and you especially don't need to keep special trackers. The person that talked about said that they felt very fortunate that it was an all male party, because they weren't even sure what would happen if they had a female in the party. And I'm like,
you mean she might have called you on your bullshit?
No, I'm thinking that maybe they're saying that you would have to deal with menstruation and several things like that. And as a male DM, now all of a sudden.
Hell.
And so it came up with this.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. You just have the group pulling a caravan behind them, or a wagon, and she has to be hauled off in the wagon during her time of the month.
Of course, yeah. So it was, I don't know. It was one of the things that was ridiculous, and kind of still shows a strange mentality of DM versus player that still exists very heavily in a lot of circles. And I don't know. I thought it was kind of hilarious, but also like kind of sad.
I would hope that they talk to their players before instituting that. Like but something like that tells me they didn't. Something like that tells me, oh, I just did that to fuck with them.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to. But even if you did talk to
them, I have one example.
A lot of DMs will say, well, this is my game. You want to play in it, you got to do this, and they don't really consider that it doesn't bring anything to the game. It doesn't enhance it in any way. And there's so many other things, if you want to talk about realism, that we should be talking about, before you get to making sure you track your bodily functions. Also,
I have one example of why that would be good.
In game, you would have feel the DM should be responsible for reminding me that I have to take a piss. Go ahead. What are you saying?
I have one good example for why or when it would be amazing to track your bodily functions.
Okay.
You're stuck at a big to-do gala, and you have to hold it. See, that would be one circumstance that I think it would be funny.
Like
you're a guest of honor, or you're expected to be there
in the middle of your speech,
and it's like,
let me see. The DM says, "Oh, let me tell you, I've checked 17 Dr. Peppers today. All right, now you're about to shake the president's hand."
Oh, but yeah, you're like the dolphin, not dolphin. At a grand gala, and you're expected to be sitting in that goddamn chair the entire time.
Dolphin with a bow tie
and a little crown.
I love it. Yeah, and you're expected to be there. You're expected to be making these speeches and shaking babies and kissing hands and whatever.
But also
else.
Toasting and drinking wine and
kissing babies and shaking hands. I'm not sure what I said there. Did I say that right?
Let's not worry about it. Let's move on.
Okay, let's move on. It's just not. It's not like it's on the internet forever or anything.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
What was Second Man saying there?
Tracking a positive that needs supporting with a check can be fun, or with a check-in can be fun, and get the feeling of a party member doing a repetition and making the other players to always think of that action when they think of the character. Oh yeah, that's a good one. Calisthenics is a good idea. That's good. I very much enjoy that.
Absolutely.
I had a slight mechanic like that in a one-shot that I was running where good Mad Rogue, you run that one-shot, you just got an idea for.
I want to hear about that one.
So there, I really need to disassemble this one-shot I attempted that turned into a two-shot that
Stephanie.
It never completed. I never finished the one-shot because it became a two-shot and we never got the second session. But I had a lot of really fun ideas that I liked. There's a particular group. Selune is a Forgotten Realms deity. It might be Forgotten Realms. That is the goddess of the moon. And her followers, her very fervent zealot followers, are called lunatics. And they're called like that. They're called that colloquially because they have really weird worshiping traditions. And I came up with this idea that every member of the lunatics has their, she's sort of a chaotic good goddess. She believes in free will and agency. You're allowed to worship her however you see fit. And the people that are super zealous about her will do the craziest fucking shit every day to worship her. Someone will go running naked in a freezing cold lake every morning to worship Selune and just weird stuff. And I let the players pick one or two of their quirks of how do you worship Selune in your own personal way. And a lot of them are meant to be these sort of awkward, socially bizarre things that they do. And it's either meant to imply that everyone who becomes a lunatic's a little off the beaten path when it comes to the kind of person they are, or that worship of her encourages you to be that zealous and that chaotic and random, that's something she sort of feeds off of. And I really so that idea of having a character have a mantra or a thing that they do every day that requires a slight check would be a fun way to reinforce that.
So I have a thought here, and this is something I've never really thought about before. I'm sure other people have. It's probably just one of those things that people were like at 17 going, yeah dude, whatever, and I'm just now getting it at 30 something. What I was thinking about here was the idea that you were just talking about you worship any way you want, but every example and most people's examples, I think, would come from some sort of sacrifice. And I was wondering, why do gods always want you to worship them through sacrifice? Why do you have to give up? If a god, especially a good god, why would they want you to refrain from something or stop something or to show your love for them? And I understand that in the hardships we turn towards those greater, but if we're specifically choosing to do something to worship someone, why couldn't we do something positive instead? Why couldn't we do something good for ourselves? And doing something good for ourselves, we're also doing something to kind of show, you gave me this life, I'm going to treat it well. So in worship to you, I'm going to take care of myself and others around me, sure, but I'm not going to sacrifice myself for others. That
sounds like an interesting perspective to take on a hedonism god, but taking it in a less gluttonous way. Yeah, it's
but I don't think it's hedonistic.
But pleasure and self-care are a thing that the god wants us to embrace, and that is how we worship it actually sounds a little bit like, I'm going to say Jubian in our game. You worship through celebration, you worship through indulgence.
But I would think that any decent god, any good god, wouldn't necessarily want you to sacrifice, unless you're sacrificing for others, not necessarily for them. But it just seems like a weird take that I think we take from our world. And, we don't want to get too much into religion in our world, but a lot of religion is used, a lot of religious practices are used to oppress people. That was kind of part of the idea.
A lot of the examples I've seen of sacrificial practices usually tend to lean towards the evil gods, at least because that's tend to be in my experience from some.
I disagree with that, because a lot of them
you've experienced others. I'm just saying what I've actually played in.
But I'm thinking, like there's in Forgotten Realms, there's gods, good gods that I believe, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, and I'll admit, but I'm pretty sure that there are good gods in Forgotten Realms and other D&D campaigns that still want their priests to be to abstain from carnal pleasures, or abstain from particular foods, or give up something during a certain time period. And they're very based on real world religions and things, but it always has to do with sacrifice, even in a lot of those rituals. And it's just something I don't see very often, is that the idea that maybe I've never seen that I can think of, that you might be able to do something positive in worship of a god for yourself. I can see how that could turn into like selfishness almost. And with a hedonist god, I almost said bot. With a hedonistic god,
that's Chad's fault.
That would make sense, but I haven't even looked.
Oh, how deliciously decadent!
As soon as I saw Chad there, I'm like, oh, okay, I can't. I'll get too many crazy ideas.
How deliciously decadent! How delightfully absurd! Oh. It's definitely an NPC in my back pocket, by the way.
On that one.
Yeah, hedonism bot is definitely a no, it's good. But yeah, that hedonism bot is definitely one of my NPC voices that I have in my back pocket. Moderation, what a ghastly concept. Oh, sorry. Okay, so yeah, that's a weird rule. It's a real weird rule. Real weird rule.
Weird is kind.
It's potentially, how about this? My final rating for this house rule. Weird flex, but okay.
My final rating is abusive at best. I think that is a poor way to treat your player.
Okay, so I just want to say that when when I looked at chat, what happened was Tessa started saying, I will say that when I was helping work on the Deities of Vale, I relied heavily on. That's all I saw, because then Chad wrote, I don't like my nipples rubbed with a belt sander.
Yes, I rely heavily on my nipples being rubbed with a belt sander.
I was like, wait, what happened?
Our chat is a hot mess right now.
We
love our hot mess, but it's a hot mess.
Anyway, apologies to everyone. That wasn't your fault, Chad. That was the chat scroll's fault.
I love that nipples got flagged and Tessa had to approve it, and it says Tessa added permission to term nipples. That's one too many. That's the problem.
Okay, anyway, so I think the next topic is very appropriate for how I'm feeling right now. Let's talk
Yes.
guilt.
Let's talk about guilt. Guilt at the table. This is a topic that we've wanted to talk about a little bit here, and I had a really great thing to talk about, and I completely forgotten it. What I really want to talk about was just this idea of feeling guilty at the table, because I run into it a lot, because my campaign is a hot mess, and there is constant disaster and gray area and people being manipulative and twisting, and downright murder. In one of the last sessions here, I had an NPC for the first time in this game who specifically was targeting and trying to kill PCs, to the point where when one of them dropped too many times and I was just tired of them getting back up, I being the person, not I being me, they used a spell that rolls 3 attacks in a single spell, Scorching Ray, and killed them. As soon as they dropped, they used Scorching Ray, one of their legendary actions, and did 3 failed death saving throws to that player and killed them. That hurts me, and to think that I because I don't want to hurt my players. I don't want to see my players crying at the end of the day, except that afterwards we sit down and we talk and they go, yes, please do it again, is the only reason why I keep coming back. I wouldn't be doing this type of game if my players weren't like, yes, this is a good kind of pain. What?
Oh, it's true. It's true.
Yeah, okay.
You're not saying anything false.
Yeah, I just we did this in Tolus, and at the end of Tolus, I killed 2/3 of the party. I made them sacrifice themselves. I made them stand there and watch and choose one person to die each night. We played for 6 nights in a row. They had to close 7 gates, I think, and they had to close it one right after another, and they had to decide who was going to be out of the game permanently. They didn't know at the time they were going to be brought back. I did. And then on the 2nd or 3rd night, they realized that not only are they dying, their soul is being destroyed. They're being completely ripped from the world. It was being protected by the first person that died. But the idea was they realized there was no coming back. There was no seeing anybody in their afterlife. And it just got worse and worse and worse as the weeks went on, but they still did it because they're trying to save the world. And it was brutal. It was the worst I've ever felt as a DM. I would literally be crying with the players during the moments, and then afterwards we would do a little bit of aftercare. We'd walk away, and I would still be crying. And even though I knew that things were going to be fixed, it was still horrible.
We didn't.
And then exactly, because they didn't. And then we go into other moments, or other moments in this game where you're just dealing with that. As a DM, it can be very frustrating. And guilt, it really riddles me with guilt sometimes that I walk away feeling like that. I just don't have that mentality of some people who might be listening right now, who have this, I can, no, they're players. I'm going to kill them. Yeah, kill them all. It's like, I don't. I want, they're my children. They're a part of me. They write the story with me. I love them all.
Sometimes, nope, never mind. Nope.
Sometimes I love
I'll
them
tell you later.
Too much. Is that what you're saying?
I'll tell you later.
Oh, okay.
It's inappropriate.
Well, write it down somewhere so you don't forget it.
How about this? I'll just say this. It's a Sims joke.
Sometimes I lock them in the thing and don't let them track their bathroom break.
It was about pools.
Oops, I missed it. All right. But yeah, so I just want to talk a little bit about that and get, Angela, your perspective. Have you ever, as a player, felt like seriously guilty about something? I actually just remembered my whole freaking point about this. That's amazing.
Yay,
so
good.
Really quick, what it comes from is from the player's perspective, because I've had players who have made mistakes in games, and sometimes because we're so passionate about the game that people out of the game, out of character, start going, what the fuck did you do? Not what did your character do? What did you do? And that's the aspect of guilt I wanted to talk about originally with this.
Yeah. Trying to maybe teach or encourage at least a modicum of compartmentalization, a little bit of being able to separate the character's actions from the player's actions. Now, sometimes player actions that are, let's call them suboptimal. Sometimes character actions that are suboptimal might come from a place of a player just being an agent of chaos, or just being like, I just want to fuck the game up. Sometimes it comes from that. And then you can have, I think, a conversation about decision making. The my guy syndrome of, oh, well, my guy would do that. My guy would, lead the entire horde to us because I wasn't paying enough attention, or like things that clearly feel out of character but are just meant to be chaos inducing. I think that is where a complaint against a player would be valid, but more than often than not, it's going to be, I'm trying not to metagame. My character only has so much information. They're going to act on that. Andy made a decision during Catalyst that I was a little upset by, and I had to be like, whatever, it's GB. Andy's got his opinions, and GB's got his opinions, and even though I didn't agree with something, Andy was, it wasn't a decision. Andy rolled a nat 1, and he took the catastrophic failure. And he was 100% sure that this person that was walking in front of him was happy to find out that we were being attacked, or that one of the party was being attacked. And so GB was 100% sure this guy had bad intentions, and he held person. This was a very delicate diplomatic situation we were trying to deal with, and it was rough, and I was real upset. I was real upset. I was real upset in the moment. Yeah,
absolutely. But as a good DM and knowing this character, as an okay DM, I had to take that. And kind of decide. You got to make a decision in that moment. Is this going to screw the party, or is this going to, or could this even be a benefit for the party? Because the idea that up to this moment, you all have been, let's say, a little racist against this group, has made some racist.
There might have been a little bit of charades about staying away from the face because your brain all gets sucked out. They were all illithid guys. They were all mind flayers. There is a level of metagaming that occurred, and I will take blame for that. That's fine. Game. That's fine.
The big bad evil is not going to be the illithid in my game, except when it is.
Except when you make it 300, then it's likely not going to be.
Emotions like this, literally.
Oh, that was okay. Just to clarify, that was I had comprehend languages on, or whatever, tongues, and it made spectral tentacles on my face. Okay, that's fine.
I am talking about several of the times people have behind their backs, but literally I've said they've been everywhere in the forest. Occasionally made little motions and things. Pip was a little bit racist when he went and tried to talk to them that first time. There was a lot of moments where it was just like, wow, okay, all right, we get you, but that's okay. And it's like you don't understand a culture, and then you're trying to learn. But this was a moment where I went, GB, this character would have seen that as a little bit of strength. The fact that he was able to, on a spell like that, which relies on I believe a wisdom save. And these are very intelligent, very wise creatures, to be able to hit with that and to get through. He had a little modicum of respect for GB, and there was no harm, no foul. And you guys have just been attacked, and he understands that. He's a very intelligent creature who is trying to make a way for his people, and that's all it is. And he understood that it was a mistake, and he was willing to move on as long as you guys were, which everyone did. It worked out really well. It was a great moment. And it was a good mistake, but Andy may have felt really guilty about it. And people could have gone on his case really heavily out of character, which we've seen in some of our games. We've had to call it out, and it happens. And people were like, oh, you're right, sorry. During combat, we have players and audience screaming in the chat sometimes. And it's like, guys, it's okay. They know what they're doing. Logan knows what he's doing. He wouldn't kill anybody willy-nilly. Well, in that combat, I kind of did. It took a lot, though. I mean, it was a lot harder than I expected.
It was not willy-nilly. That was a lot of effort.
There was a lot of effort in that. Although, had I remembered Scorching Ray at the beginning, it would have been over a lot faster. But I got to keep that one in my pocket. But overall, yeah, it's a really incredible experience, because I'd never had it in my past. I've never had this guilt like to this level, as a DM, or seeing it on the other side. But the big thing is, I want to say, as a player, you're going to make mistakes. The DM's going to take something you said or did, and he's going to use it against you at some point. As long as they're not doing it all the time and doing it maliciously, try to roll with it. Rolling with the punches is an important part of this. And if something's important to you, make sure you act upon it in game. Don't assume the DM's going to know that you want to do something or have been doing something. because for any reason the DM's going to grab onto things. DM's looking at the world as a very different place. He looks at the big grand picture. And if you say, oh, I'm doing this, and I do this every night, and I do this or that, or I'm going to go here and I want to fight these people, he's going to be looking at the consequences of that all around you. And occasionally those consequences are going to come back.
Sure.
Now, one thing I made a mistake on, and told us, and I've said this on the show before, is I drilled into your heads the idea that what one of you does affects everyone. That was a huge mistake. It was the biggest mistake I've ever made in gaming, because everybody shut down for about 3 weeks and nobody did anything because they were too worried about making a mistake that was going to affect the entire party.
We contracted decision paralysis.
Yes. And in this game, I've tried to make it very clear that you are all individuals, and whatever you do does not necessarily affect the whole party. It can affect you, and it might affect the group you're with initially, but overall it might have overarching concerns with the world. But you, in the end, you do a lot more good than you do bad. So don't stop, because if you stop, then the balance goes back to the bad,
But then you have characters that say, you've done more bad than good, or your good is bad. Which happened once in this game. So Secondhand Samurai made...
critical fails...
Yeah.
What we do with critical fails is a nat 1 is always a failure, but... I give the players the option to make it a critical failure, so they can decide when those critical failures happen and when they don't. And they get a hero die. If they accept the critical failure, they get this huge benefit to kind of balance the scales a little bit.
I do like the idea, though, of depending on the game, having a quick sidebar with everybody so that we can brainstorm together. Sometimes it helps because, like, the DM might not know. Okay, I can either think for a minute about what's going to happen, or I can be like, hey guys, what do you think happens when this... Because a lot of times people just start riffing and going, oh my god, it'd be really funny if this happened. Like, yeah, that's what happens. Go.
Yep.
So sometimes
write a better story than you ever could.
Letting them dig their own hole, as it were.
Absolutely.
Because then there's a little bit of levity to it. Like, sometimes it's just more like, oh, this is really funny because we came up with this joke, and oh well, just embrace the fail.
A large portion of the best D&D games I've ever seen or DM'd are over half, a large portion, well over half, are just reactions to what the players are doing. Reacting to what your players are doing is very important. It makes them feel like they have a say in the world. And even if they don't, you can make it look like they do. But it makes them say that it makes them feel like they have a say in the world, and that what they do actually matters. Because the worst thing you can do is to take away their agency and have them feel and walk away feeling like it didn't matter what we did. This is exactly what was going to happen anyway. That is a bad feeling as a player, even if you get to play through it. And unless that was set up front, you say something up front and you're like, okay, look, we're going to run through this module. This module has a distinctive ending. It's very possible that that's where we're headed, but that's okay, because then you're playing through something like that. If you're going to run something a little railroady, if you're going to have this grandiose ending, and that's what it's going to be like, you can tell your players up front and be like, look, I have a plan for how things are going to go. I have this epic battle and this thing and this, things you're going to do along the way will help you discover it and learn about it. But the ending, you're still going to be throwing the ring into the volcano, and, you're going to decide not to do it. And, but you're going to end up winning anyway, because somebody's going to bite your finger off. It's just, that's going to happen. Your players, some players like that, some players won't. But anyway, so guilt from your angle. Have you ever done anything in game that you've just walked away feeling incredibly guilty about?
Probably.
Yeah,
I would say that guilt's a big deal for me in general, whether it's in or out of game. So I'm sure I have. I feel like I've seen it more than I've experienced it that I remember. I certainly, in retrospect, I've seen situations that I'll just be as vague as possible, but like somebody makes a mistake, or not even a mistake. I think it really boils down to character decisions. Character made a decision that complicated the situation, made the situation more dangerous, made the situation a little more hazardous. Oh well. But your reaction to this is sort of like the flip side of people getting on someone's case. Sometimes you feel like you messed up so badly and nobody else does. They're cracking jokes. They're like, yeah, it was fine, whatever, it's great. But you've still internalized this huge guilt for what you did. And that's also important to keep in mind. It's fine if everybody's laughing and joking. Also, if you're one of those people that are laughing and joking, be mindful of how the other person who actually did the thing might feel. They might not be taking it so lightly because they're the ones who made the decision to do that. So I think it goes both ways. Guilt is something that you want to, I would hopefully think everyone would try to not worry about, but someone's feelings could get hurt. And whether that's the person who made the decision or the person that experienced the repercussions of that decision, somebody might feel unevenly guilty or unevenly upset by something that happened. And I think in general, mantra needed on a goddamn t-shirt, communication is key.
Yep.
After something happens like that, if you feel like the energy has shifted in the group, you can feel it sometimes. You can feel when somebody, and I've done this before, like made a decision, or I think most of the time for me it's like dice rolls, something out of my control, but it feels like, damn it, I can't do anything. And it just feels like you're messing up by sheer virtue of just not being able to do anything. You can see it. You can see it on a player when you can often see it on a player when they're feeling like they messed up or that something's not right. Or you can feel when people start getting a little snipey at players, at each other. You can feel when it stops being a joke. I think sometimes you can feel it when it stops being the character complaining.
The problem with that is, part of that is that sometimes when you watch 6 people, you can tell when it stops being a joke to the majority, but you can't always tell when it stops being a joke to one person. That takes a lot of really knowing the people and stuff, and you can run into those issues. There have been times when I have not stepped in certain things and to stop things where it ends up being a problem for 1 or 2 people I didn't realize. And there was an entire session we had in Tolis where 4 of the people in the game were very excited about the character drama going on. 2 of them were like, eh. And we had 2 or 3 people watching the audio, or our other players, who hated it, with vitriolically made them sick, the level of PvP that was going on in game. And that was something I didn't know. And it was hard to parse out because I knew I'd failed somewhere. But I know that these 4 people wanted to do this and they loved this type of PvP, this yelling and screaming at each other. And so I knew that I had this group. I had 2 other people. I was like, I'm not sure. I don't think they mind. I should have checked. That was on me. But
that's where safety tools are useful.
Yep.
If someone said,
it still would have been okay with it in general. But yeah, that would have been a good safety tool, a time to have safety tools at that point. I think they would have said okay in general anyway to going and doing it, but they would have been prepared at least. But then to have a couple of people away from the game who were very upset about it, it kind of made me wonder which way I should be leaning. I didn't know that, but I still don't really know. It really depends on the situation, because I have had some things happen in game where somebody comes to me and says, I really wasn't comfortable with this. And my goal is always to try to make everyone as comfortable as possible. But it was such a strange thing that it was like, I don't know if I can DM without that one thing. It's such an important factor in the way that I do my DMing. And we talked more about it, and I found it got more down to the root of the issue. And I was able to find out what it was and be like, okay, yeah, no, I can handle that. But when something comes along and somebody has an issue with something, you're like, and if somebody came to me and said NPC betrayal is a hard line for me, I'm like, this is not the game for you. It's like, I can't DM without those gray areas. I don't, and I'm going to try, actually, when this is all over, going to try to do a high adventure, goofy, silly, traditional style.
You can tell when someone's evil. You can tell when someone's good.
All the bad guys wear black hats type of game.
But black hats are stylish. That's not fair.
All the bad guys wear chartreuse hats.
There you go. Horrid.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is coming from the character I want to play in this game.
Velvet felt chartreuse hats with a leopard print band. Nope,
we're done.
Green
nope.
And leopard print fluffy overcoats.
What happens if it's a leopard tabaxi? They just clash.
Oh, that's horrible.
No, Chad, it doesn't sound like something a bad guy would say. It sounds like someone a stylish guy would say.
Yeah.
Just putting
Well,
it out
same.
there.
Most bad guys, most stylish people in D&D worlds are the bad guys.
Oh, it's gonna be such a burden for my character to have all the bad guys be so well dressed.
And I don't know if it's something I want to touch on right now, but Chad, and I hope you don't mind calling out a little bit, Chad, I apologize. Chad did just say something that I disagree with a little bit. He says that something like ultimately it's just a game. I disagree with that statement. This while it is considered a game, saying it's just a game is unfortunately a little dismissive into the emotions that we put into these things. And you can say it's just a book, or it's just a book series, or it's just a movie, or it's just a television show, but we put a lot of who we are into these sort of entertainments. And I've seen that I've said it 100 times before, but looking back on my life and realizing that if it hadn't been for these games, I probably wouldn't be here. I realized that somewhere along the way, it's much more than a game to me. It's a way of life. It's who I want to be. It may just be a game to some people, but not to me. And it is what I want to dedicate my life to. So saying it's just a game, and unfortunately, is a little dismissive to people who really kind of step into identify as a gamer, I guess is the thing. It's these games are important, and what happens to them is important. The fact that you look and you see how often D&D is now being used in therapy, and how we've got literal therapists out there talking about the benefits of D&D and things, it can be so much more. And I think it is all the time. We just are using it. For a lot of people, it is that therapy. It is the way of as Angela said to me before, is connecting with a part of you that you can't look at in real life. It's a way of being in a safe place and confronting that part of your life sometimes in a safe space, which I really love the idea of.
So Chat's bringing up both Chad and Chat. Mad Rogue and Chad are bringing up a very good point. The idea, and this is something that I think we'll put in a segment. I think it's worth talking about.
We'll probably do a whole segment on that when we have a guest on.
Bleed over being a topic that, much in the same way that emotional investment and exploring your own personal, whether it's issues or just things about yourself, exploring those things can feel very personal, and you can take things very personally in game when you put so much of yourself into your character or into the game, and you put so much investment or expectation or lots of things. Entering things with expectations, especially in these games, can be a pitfall in itself. But the bleed over that can happen, that like relationships start in the game, that can be a huge problem. Not that I don't think it should happen. It's just being very aware of it. And
knowing where those boundaries are, I agree with that completely. It was just the language of saying it's just a game.
Sure.
That is the language
sure.
I didn't agree with. And I just wanted to kind of put that out there since it was in our chat.
Yeah. No, I understand.
That was it. I completely, yes, there needs to be boundaries. We need to have check-ins. You need to do player aftercare. You need to have some sort of safety systems in place, even if it's just lines and veils. All of these things are very important, and watching and understanding out of character interactions and watching for those types of moments, because I'll tell you, we have problems in Countless Heroes. We've had problems in Tolis. It happens in every group, especially when you play 100 hours a week or 100 hours a month. You're going to run into these sorts of issues. And they stem from kind of the interactions in game a lot of times. And you, as a DM or leader or just part of the game, can, it's just something to watch for. And you'll start to see people maybe acting differently around each other or not talking to each other as much. And sometimes you just kind of have to step in and find out what's going on. You hope that everyone will come to you when there's issues, but sometimes they don't. And then sometimes you get in situations where it kind of builds up.
Yeah. So I have two points.
So
yeah, the bleed over is more of a tangent. It's just something to be conscious of. I think there's a fine line, and something that needs to be very, let me think about how to phrase this. When you pour too much of yourself into your character, bleed over can be incredibly easy. If you put something in the game that is meant to be challenging for you, that is when it can be healthy. Just for my own example, the 1,000-hour game that we played in Tolis, I played a cleric. I don't have any relationship in my real life to religion. And I had a tremendously powerful experience in-game interacting with religion in a way that I had never done so or hadn't since I was very, very young. And I found that incredibly therapeutic and very cathartic for me to gain a little bit of empathy of what it would feel like to have the amount of faith that a cleric has to have in order to have that relationship with a god. And so that in and of itself, that's not something that causes me pain, but it's something that I was like, okay, yeah, it hadn't been something I had actively pursued, but it was something that I discovered as the game went on, that's what I was experiencing. And it was very powerful and interesting. I was able to compartmentalize because I still have the opinions I have in my real life. And so I didn't change anything, but it gave me empathy for something that I hadn't had before. The alternative, where there's a bit of a danger is when you put something into the game because it's precious to you and you don't want anything bad to happen to it.
Yes.
That is a danger. If you don't articulate that with your DM from the get-go, that you have put a concept or a character or a relationship into a game because it's painful in real life and you want a positive experience for it. Right. You want it to be safe. You have to tell your DM that's why it's there. Because if it's...
That's a good point.
Because if you don't, and that DM thinks it's... I like lines and veils. I love knife theory. If it's not one of the... Like, if you don't have knife theory, it could be fair game for the DM to put it in peril. Whatever it is that you're experiencing. Whatever it is you've put in. So it's important to express that to your DM if there is something that is notably placed in there because you need it to be safe.
And also don't expect, especially with someone like me who changes rules and changes how the world works on a metaphysical level constantly, don't assume that something is safe just because the rules say that it's safe. Things
you
change,
express
things
to the
happen. DM. Yeah, you need to tell the DM that this thing is here, and you would really appreciate if they not fuck with it. Whatever it could be.
Yeah. The other point I wanted to make was rolling back a little bit. This is actually really good. Literally rolling back in this conversation to talk about how we started this. Yeah, I have a wheel. I have wheels. I can roll back. So we're talking about guilt. We're talking about... Your wife is shipping me and her in the chat right now. A ship that never was. Or that almost was but never could be. Tola's character reference, sorry. So when you were talking about the heightened arguments in game, I had a thought about how to approach that when you have if you have players or characters that are getting into a very strong PvP situation and they're arguing quite fiercely with each other, they are shouting or something like that, and you have players, this is especially easy in online situations. Someone could DM you and say, I'm really uncomfortable with the screaming match that's happening right now. If that happens, it had occurred to me that one of the ways to resolve that would be stepping in to the argument that's happening. You take it down a notch, and then you spend a little bit of time letting them meta discuss the argument. Say, okay, you guys continue this level of fierce arguing. It gets very, you're name calling. You're getting a ton of frustration out. And then maybe just sort of say, you guys fight. You fight for a while. Everyone's really, really upset, and then you guys you break off. You can't even see each other. You can't talk to each other for a while, and you in the game basically indicate, okay, we're done shouting. We need to move on with this. We understand, like, you guys are fighting. If you want to talk meta right now, how those characters are feeling, let's do that. Because sometimes you might get into a situation where fights or real vitriolic argument might not resolve. It might just I've seen it happen. It might just run in circles and just becomes toxic and unpleasant instead of becoming a resolution for the conflict. So you might need to force the conflict to resolve and say, okay, where would your common ground be right now? Or do you guys need to take a break from each other as characters? What is that resolution? And maybe this took 4 hours for you guys in character to come up with this, but where is that break in your relationship starting to mend? We need to talk about solutions rather than it, 'cause you can sort of tell if an argument goes on for like 15 to 20 minutes, you're like, this is not getting resolved right now.
Yeah.
So it's just important to know that line of when to say, okay, that amount of fighting is the max amount of fighting I'm allowing at the table right now.
I think that's a good thing. But you did talk about taking a break, and it's that time. We are not doing well on getting through our things today, but we're having some amazing conversations. And Chad did bring up one last little point that I want to say is that, he said that in his opinion, he doesn't think that people should bring that type of thing to the game. If it's something so important to you at a game that it can't be hurt, if it's something in real world that you think is that precious and important, maybe it doesn't belong in the game. In a game,
that's
where
fine. You definitely figure out where those things belong in a game. Those might belong in a different.
But that's
game.
why communication is key. And as a DM, and this is obviously stemming from a real world situation, but we're not going to call out or talk about it specifics. But it came from a real world situation, and I as a DM have never had anyone do that. And then all of a sudden somebody did that, and it was a very difficult situation for me. So I didn't know in session 0 to bring that up. And our session 0 lasted for 4 months before we got to this point. We had 4 months of session 0 and learning about our characters and learning about each other and trying new characters out and things, literally before we started that campaign. And we didn't know that. And it was just a situation that never come up. Now it's something I might put into my session 0. So that's why we share it. So maybe you might be helpful for you too.
Autumn came up with a thought just now, and we can discuss it. That might make sense to use our custom emojis in Twitch, maybe as a means of getting more communicative emojis as a way of sort of non-verbally signaling certain things. So if someone's getting really upset verbally in chat, but having a certain emoji that you can use that's like, no, this is just me excited. I'm not actually mad at anybody. I'm just getting overly. We just have
to find one and pick it because we can't add emojis. Yeah. We only get one emoji for the channel. Because Twitch somehow seems to think that that's a smart thing to do. We have to become a partner to get any more than that, or you have to pay. We can technically have one for each subscriber level as well. So you can pay to be the 3 subscriber levels if you were interested. But
sure, there's things in here that we could probably pick from, but we'll definitely take a look. I think that's an interesting resolution to that, or an interesting idea for how to
excited in parentheses,
but there's things like there's like heart hands, there's stuff you could use that is like, absolutely. I just need to non-verbally express.
I think that emojis can play a very important role in communication, in digital communication. That's nothing to do with gaming, but I've had a lot of friends where I've been like, can you just throw an emoji on that so I know how you're feeling?
Yeah.
I don't know if you're upset or angry or just being sarcastic or funny. Are you enjoying this conversation? Whatever.
Okay, I do like the injured, bloodied, tooth missing, thumbs up Super Meat Boy. I think that's a good example of you're beating me up, but I'm fine.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. Sorry, secondhand. We're both reading it at the same time. I'm just gonna let Logan read it, and then I'll talk for a while. No, it's fine. That's a good way of.
Oh, that's a good idea. I like that a lot. So he's talking about you making these descriptions in part of the characters third person focused. So you're not saying I. You start saying my character, and making that kind of disconnecting them from that a little bit and having them describe it a little bit more. I like that a lot. It's a good one.
Yeah.
But we are past 1 o'clock. We need to do our ad break real quick.
Sure. I'm excited.
Get back on, and we're going to move on. But obviously, we need to come back to this topic. It was very interesting. We got a lot of new topics to kind of stem off of here from that I think are very, very important. So thank you guys.
Yes. Bleed over, and emotional health in game. I think is going to be a series. Yeah.
I got it.
Thank you. All right, so we're gonna take not a break to go away, just a break in the conversation to talk a little bit about our sponsors. We're still here. Our fabulous sponsor, which I believe shows up potentially in the session plan area. I don't know if they do, but Die Hard.
You pointed right at it.
Die Hard Dice. Die Hard Dice. They're absolutely amazing. Todd and the Die Hard Dice crew have been incredibly generous to the Nerdsmith Network and to Discover RPG. We are super duper excited to have a slightly more direct partnership with them, as Logan and I are working on a series of videos. The small videos that we promised since the very first episode of this show are finally starting to get produced, and Die Hard Dice is going to be sponsoring those and promoting them on their blog, on their website, dieharddice.com. They haven't put the new one up yet because they're renovating their blog, I believe, but when they do the launch, they will start putting our videos up. They will be exclusive on Die Hard Dice's website for about a week, I believe, and then we'll start having them available on our YouTube channel, which Logan potentially can find if we have a link to the YouTube channel. But you can also find us on Discover. Just search Discover RPG on YouTube. Eventually, we hope if you follow us, that would be amazing, because when we get to a certain level of followers, we can make a custom URL, which would make it easier for people to find the
100 followers do that. I'll get that here in a second. So the Die Hard Dice just released several new dice this month, including their new Spellbinder dice, which are 2-tone colorways of this kind of color overlay they have, and they're really gorgeous, a blue and a purple. So there's that. And you can get your own set of Die Hard Dice by going to dieharddice.com and using the coupon code DRPG, 4 little letters, DRPG, Discover RPG, and you can get 15% off of your order. That includes these brand new gorgeous dice. All of them are custom designed by Todd and his crew, and they are, I believe, are all hand colored. I still need to find out if that's 100% true, but they at least do the hand coloring to get the initial colors down, and then I think they either turn over the factory, they may hand color them all themselves, which would be amazing. But they're incredible people overall. We're just so happy to be working.
They're so pretty.
And I'll go get the website real quick. The YouTube.
I just got it. Don't worry about it.
Okay, got it. So please come and take a look at our YouTube, and that will be coming along very soon. We'll be getting those videos out. We're working on our next one for that. What else? So we should talk about
World Anvil.
We should talk about World Anvil. So let's talk a little bit about World Anvil. So we are expanding not only as a network, but also this show. The World Anvil is, as of, I think, our conversation yesterday, is now a sponsor of this show, or at least that's coming incredibly soon enough that we're going to go ahead and talk about them. They are expanding their sponsorship of the network as a whole. They are adding some custom functionality just for us. They are really, really stepping up. I'm going to be doing some amazing things. And we have a lot of big surprises coming over the next few months as well from them. To kind of be involved, but right now they're sponsoring this show. They're coming in like a wrecking ball, and they are really just making us very, very happy. So what we are doing in exchange, and what we really want to do for us as well, because we need time to world build and stuff, is we're going to start a new stream. It's going to be DRPG2 or Squared or I don't know what. It's just going to be a second DRPG stream where instead of doing this, we're going to be world building. We're going to be doing the other aspect of this, instead of talking about the behind the scenes and rules and stuff like that. We're going to be doing the creative side of things and creating and fleshing out characters and maps and all sorts of things for our campaigns. And we're going to do it all within World Anvil. You'll be able to see the screen of World Anvil. You'll be able to see us, because I think that's very important as we sit there and stare at our computers and chit chat. I hope it will be just as entertaining. And our first episode, we don't have a set schedule, but the first episode will be today at 3 o'clock PST, and we will be right here again doing this show for about an hour. We think it's going to be about an hour long, but eventually when it moves to its official time slot, we don't know when that's going to be. We'll go ahead and set the actual hour, however long it's going to be then. But yeah, so that's what we're doing with World Anvil. So they're going to be a sponsor of this show as part of that. Very excited about working with them on all the endeavors coming up.
Heck yeah.
And everything that they are. They're also doing some major releases this week, which are going to include co-ownership on World Anvils, which is amazing. Co-ownership, also writer levels, so you can now have people writing in the campaigns like a wiki, but they cannot see any of the secret stuff behind the scenes, and also the vanity the vanity titles are coming out this week.
URLs,
so,
the custom URLs.
The vanity URLs are coming out. So a lot of really incredible releases. They're doing just new stuff all the time, and I hope if any of that was wrong, Secondhand can poke us a little bit. World Anvil LUTF, World A, I don't know. World Ludif. I suppose that's something I'm supposed to know, and I'm too old to know.
Light up the forge.
Oh yeah, see,
there you go.
All right, World A, light up the forge, perfect. So go check out worldanvil.com. You can check out the Countless Heroes one, but we'll talk more about that later. But anyway, so that's
we call it Discover RPG World Forge.
So I think what it is I think what this is going to be Discover RPG, and our major sponsor here is going to be World Nerdsmith or Die Hard Dice, and then over there on that show, we'll have the major sponsor will be World Anvil. So I like that we kind of break that up a little bit. We'll talk about both on both, I'm sure. Also, let's go back real quick to Die Hard Dice. We haven't decided about our giveaway this month. I was proposing that we do the giveaway to one lucky person who tweets about the show this week or this month.
Heck yeah. So yes, I will put a thing up. I'll put a thing up that says
February, and anybody who tweets about our show, talks about their favorite moment or tags us and gives us some advice or a question
or a topic or something.
Anybody who does that over this month will go ahead and be entered into a contest to win a free set of Die Hard dice. And yes, that can include these beautiful Spellbinder Nightfall dice.
Heck yeah.
That's that $54.95 plus shipping. It's all included. You get it completely free, and I believe it's anywhere in the world. So that's all you have to do is just go ahead and tweet about us, put us out there, and we'll probably be doing it based on every entry. So if you tweet, the more you tweet about us, the more you'll probably be entered, because we just put in a big chart and roll.
Sure.
Yeah, so as long as you don't go excessive more than, but once every other day or something, I'm sure maybe 10 entries max or something. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Somebody goes crazy and tweets about a lot, that might be a little ridiculous.
I do, Autumn, I do want to give you a little bit of heads up or a little shout out in the chat. I do really like the popcorn emoji for I'm really freaking out. Oh my god, but you're not actually upset. I'm a good fan. I'm a big fan.
I love that, and I want to say thank you to Autumn for working with me on some secret projects right now. Autumn has been really awesome in being very patient with me and is learning what all the other directors already know, that I'm a very difficult person to work with. I am. I'm sorry. At least I can admit. Yeah. At least I can admit it. But so thank you, Autumn. Autumn is a big supporter of our network. She's one of our contributors. She does art. She's also a writer, and she has written a book. And I think we should post that book here.
Heck, yes. Autumn, put a link to your book in the chat. I'm sure you have access to it.
Permits La Celentario. Did I do that right? Nope.
Maybe.
Didn't work. Oh, I don't have the chat button up. Put it up there. We'll be able to relink it. Just put it up there. Oh God.
Yeah.
All right. So that is, and then of course we're proud members of the Nerdsmith Network. Very, very proud to be part of the Nerdsmith Network, and with all the other amazing shows over there. If you'd like to support us over the Nerdsmith Network, you can do so at nerdsmith.org/donate. And all the proceeds go. I almost said they go to charity, but they don't. I'm sorry. That's our Countless Heroes. They go to charity. You can support Countless Heroes if you want, but we actually, they go to Nerdsmith. We take all the money we earn here, we put it back into Nerdsmith to help pay for things. Like our big WonderCon meetup that's coming up, and you see down below over there, we have our WonderCon meetup fund. This is to help us pay for the big meetup that we're going to do at WonderCon. If you're going to be there,
and when we do it, we're going to take pictures. We're going to take footage if we can.
If we're in a position that it's not too noisy, we might live stream for a little bit. We can live stream from our phones.
Heck yeah.
It won't have any of the fancy borders or frames or anything, but we can do a quick live stream and maybe be on there for 10 minutes or so just to show everyone, say hi. If nothing else, we can do a Facebook Live or something like that. We'll link to it.
And I'd also like to take some footage and try to do a little commemorative video of our first.
And I will have my very nice video camera there. It's not super nice. I've been looking at some super nice ones lately.
Andy will be there too. Andy loves being a fly on the wall and taking pictures. So we'll all have fun.
Which is funny because he's also an amazing networker. I've seen him.
Right? I didn't know. I don't think he knew that he was that good at that. Okay. So yeah, we love Nerdsmith. Oh, and might as well plug our new members. So as of this week, we have officially added a new member of the Nerdsmith Network, and we need to get a tweet out on that too if we haven't already.
Well, we don't have the page set up. Usually we do the page set up online first.
That'll be this week.
So if we're gonna talk about one of the shows that we've already approved and is not on the website yet, we should talk about the other one too that was technically approved before that.
Correct.
So you handle one, I'll handle.
Okay, so we have a new Twitch stream now on the Nerdsmith Network, Kajari's Curious Crafts. And let me get that link. You can find Anne and her team at Curious Crafts on Twitch. Anne is a terrain builder and a DM and a general crafty person. She has a couple of different shows that she runs over the course of the week. Right now, at least as of her last stream, she was making a half-sunken halfling village, which I love dearly, the concept of that. And she shows you how to make it. She's just live streaming her production process as she's building these really neat RPG terrains. She also has a segment during the week where she creates little holiday ornaments or just little ornaments and decorations. And then she, on Fridays, I believe, has a homebrew brainstorming session with her chat, and you guys can help her build a world that she's trying to run, help her brainstorm things, and and since she's coming on board, we're hoping to get her working on World Anvil too, so that she can stream using that. But yeah, Anne is incredibly helpful. She's been on the network for a grand total of like a handful of days, and she's already such a great fit to the group. She's already helping people out and being amazing. So please give her a look and support her if you can. And we are tremendously proud to have Anne and Kijari's Curious Crafts on the network now.
Yes, very, very excited. And then we also have another amazing show that I'm very excited about is Tooth and Nail, with Orion Lovell and Travis Mattingly, who has been Travis Mattingly has been a big supporter of our network for a long time now. And when I found out he was on a podcast, I really wanted to hear more. And then we have him and Orion do this wonderful monster podcast where they talk about the monsters from the Monster Manual. They break them down. They talk a little more in depth about them, talk about their history, and give you some alternatives. And then otherwise are just goofy, silly, fun guys. They right now are just starting out. They've only got 5 or 6 episodes, but they are funny. It's the audio cleaned up really, really well towards the 5th and 6th episodes. They are just hilarious guys. I listened to all of 2 or 3 episodes now, which is a lot for a podcast for me with how much I have to listen to every week. And so we've been very excited about that. So I want to post the link to their YouTube. Oh, you just did.
I did. So when you're talking, I'm doing the work. When I'm talking, you do the work, and then we're complimenting each other.
That's what I was doing while you were talking, was getting the link. Anyway, they are now officially part of the Nerdsmith Network. But we don't have their page up yet. But it's just been a little too long. We're just going to get that out there that we're teasing that they're a part of the network, and they'll be fully integrated sometime this month, hopefully. Just got to get the last few details down and get their website built, or their webpage built. But yeah, they are part of the network now. So that is everything. Oh, and of course, Matthew Siebert, we are working very hard to finish up his artwork and everything, because with Matthew Siebert, he is going to be, who does the Land Above podcast, also one of our most recent acquisitions.
One of our awesome partners in the network.
Partners.
You gotta get that business lingo out of your head.
It's tough. He is also going to be doing a homebrew show called Homebrew Studio, which is going to be during Wednesdays, I believe, around probably 4 or 5. We'll have to talk to Matthew about that exactly what time. But anyway, that's going to be coming hopefully in the next couple of weeks if he's ready to go, because I'm going to get all the artwork hopefully finished today and tomorrow on that. So
I'm sorry in advance, Matthew. I cannot think about your show without going Homebrew Studio.
Homebrew Studio.
It's
like
just
pop-up video.
Yep, it's in my brain forever.
Awesome.
Maybe we
All
can
right,
make
let's
him
get
a
back to
theme
this.
song.
We got a lot to get.
Yeah, maybe we can make a theme song for him that's like a knockoff of that.
Oh God.
No, I won't do that to you unless you give me permission. Then I totally will.
MTV needs money right now, so let's not do that. There might be a little litigation.
Anyway, okay, so let's get moving on. Thank you for joining us for our quick trip to the ad break place. It's not the money zone; it's the ad break place.
Quick, but that's okay. Yeah, you can't say money's.
All right, so we have all systems go.
I'm trying to get a suit today.
Yeah. So speaking of Matthew, thank you, Matthew, for your question before that led us to our topic right now. All systems go. We would like to talk about. So we've said we play a lot of D&D 5e. We admit that there are, let's say, things that 5e does amazing, things that 5e doesn't maybe do super great, or just wanting to add a little bit of different flavor to the game, wanting to add a mechanic that just hasn't even been considered in 5e and doesn't. Maybe there's a blank spot in the game that you wish there were. There are so many systems out there, and many people might lean into the idea that, well, just go play another system. You can just play a different game if you want a different kind of experience. Sometimes all it takes is just doing a little bit of DIY in your 5e campaign to add that thing that you think was missing. And so I've played around with this. I'm sure Logan's played around with this. The idea of adding mechanics from other systems into 5e to do something a little special. So, Logan, do you have any good examples of other systems?
So many examples.
Bring it on.
So many examples.
Go ahead.
We can go with the Toll example, but
Yes.
we can hold on to that one because that was one's blatantly ripped off from Travis
But
McElroy.
it worked
and
so
the
well.
Amazon.
But it worked so well.
But it works really well. But let's talk about White Wolf. White Wolf has been a huge influence on my gaming. It's what I grew up with. It's what I started with. I didn't get into D&D until almost 4 years after I started doing role-playing. I didn't get in heavily until another probably 2 years after that. 3.0 was probably when I got really heavily into D&D. So I've been doing White Wolf most of my life. So you can see that influence, especially in other realms. I run almost all of my other realms as if they were the Umbra from Werewolf the Apocalypse. That's where I learned about these other realms, these pocket dimensions and things like that. So a lot of the influence there comes from that. The other night you guys ran into something called Balefire. Balefire is a direct lift from Werewolf the Apocalypse. It's a green mutating fire that actually changes and mutates people instead of just burning them. There's been a lot of things I put in there. How I run my vampires is very along the lines of that. They're much more conniving and a lot less of boy, this up your blood, because of the influences that come from White Wolf. So White Wolf has a huge influence across many of the games that I run. I think about Humanity a lot, which was a system from Vampire the Masquerade, and anybody who's got supernatural powers has this ability to kind of disconnect from the rest of the society around them. And I'd use that. I talked to you guys about that recently. You're standing in this huge crowd of all these people, and somebody was like, "Oh, I want to see if I see anybody else." It's like, you guys stand out a lot. You guys are disconnected from society, at least physically, because you guys are carrying around these big, powerful magical weapons and this armor, and you're in armor in the middle of the street in the middle of the morning during a celebration because you're adventurers. You're always ready. You stand apart. You look like you are somebody important. And that, I keep teasing this idea that you are separate from everyone else, because that may become very important later on, that only after a year and a half, you may turn around and look at your city and be like, I don't know that I belong here anymore, because the city maybe eventually is peaceful, and maybe it is a nice place. It's like the assassin from Serenity. This idea like, I don't belong in this world and neither do you. Like, when you're gone, I'm gone. It's just the way it's going to be. And it's an interesting concept, and all of that comes from White Wolf for the most part.
Trying to think of a good one that I've done before. Well, Shenanigans. When we first started launching Shenanigans, I proposed that we take the aspect system from Fate and at least use it for our initial character creation and our player and our party dynamic. We don't use it in the same way that Fate does. It's not a frequent mechanic. We're not invoking those aspects of our characters in order to gain any sort of mechanical advantages. It's purely, we used it as a character personality sheet. It was figuring out how our roads intersected that led us to all become a party. And that is something I really dig about the Fate system, that storytelling is the primary motivator of Fate. And even in the mechanics, your benefits and your detractions as a character come from the story beats that you've created as a character, as a player. I really, really like that, and I love the fact that you can. That's one of our bonus contents on Nerdsmith. Is our session 0 is us making the Fate aspects for our characters and our adventures together that led us all together to be one group. So I really, really like the aspect system in Fate. I'm a real big fan.
And then, just very much like Travis McElroy, we took Powered by the Apocalypse, and we used a little bit of that system. I didn't use the dice rolling system for a lot of things. I've used it here and there, and we've used that to create whole new, not systems, but whole new game genres around it. But not genre. Anyway, whatever. But we took the bonds and assets feel and experience feel from the way that Travis McElroy used it in the Adventure Zone.
Ian Griffin?
Griffin McElroy used it in the Adventure Zone. I've been on a Travis kick lately. Griffin McElroy in the Adventure Zone used it, and we used it in a game where I had you earning those kind of points, and during downtimes I actually did use the system, the dice system, during a lot of downtimes and stuff, to just do little quick things. We didn't want to deal with it a lot, and just like, I need a quick decision. Okay, roll 2d6. Let's see how you do. And we used it, but we used the system for when they almost exactly like Griffin McElroy did. When they got into a major combat, they had the opportunity to call in allies to come and help them in this gigantic battle. And it was a battle going into it that I'm like, the players are going to win this battle. They have an army. I mean, they've got a huge army against this small group, but how do I make it important? And one of the ways was that I used that system to kind of let them choose who they wanted to bring in. Some of them called in their enemies. I'm like, okay, we just got to justify how you get your enemy to come and help you. And it's the idea that you convince them through an intermediary that it would be in their best interest to be there. And so they were.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed the bond and asset system. I think it's a neat way of abstracting some of what could turn into kind of grinding in a game, where like the magic items and things that you have, it turning them into an abstract currency, I think empowers the game to have a slightly more hand-waving feel, where you're like, well, let's build something that narratively feels good instead of nitpicking, okay, well, 2 days ago you didn't go do this, so I can't give you any benefit today because you didn't go do that. It's maybe giving people a little bit more credit for what I had talked about earlier, which was, you're not living in the day-to-day life of this character. You as a player, as an inventor of story, might not have come up with an idea, but you have created a character that you would like to say would have come up with this idea because they are that kind of character. You're trying to think like them. So I like how the asset system works in that way.
All right. So, and I agree with you. Chat is talking about a system called Devil's Bargain from Blades in the Dark. And I just looked it up real quick. So here's the concept, and I'm really kind of liking it. Blades in the Dark, it has a mechanic called Devil's Bargain. Anyone at the table can propose a consequence will happen, 100% sure, if a player allowing a player to take an extra die on the roll. Only one of these can apply to any player or any roll. A player can accept the bargain before rolling or after rolling. However, bargains offered after rolling can be much more demanding. The quick start guides that might reveal a valuable secret, sacrifice a coin or item, betray a friend or loved one, anger a powerful enemy, make a dangerous promise, add heat to the crew from evidence or witnesses, or suffer harm. It's a really neat little mechanic, and it goes back to that idea that you're world building and creating with the people around you. So thank you guys for that. That may make an appearance, if not necessarily throughout the rest of Countless Heroes, it already struck a moment that it might work really well as part of an in-game mechanic. So it kind of reminds me of it feels like if Buffy were a thing. Once More with Feeling, that whole episode was the result of one of these Devil's Bargains.
I very much like that. Another thing from Fate that I really like incorporating, and Logan, you've tried it a couple of times, the idea of distances not necessarily being mathematically determined, but having it be close range, nearby, distant, and far away. That those are your 4 ranges. You can move based on your movement might dictate how easily it is to move between those 4, let's call them zones. Fate works in zones like that. That you can sort of navigate the zones instead of I'm 20 feet away, I'm 5 feet away, you're 30 feet away. That doesn't necessarily bode well. Well, actually, never mind. You fix that by just determining close range is within 5 feet, nearby is 10 to 30, distant is 30 to 60, and far away is anything past 60. So then anytime you have a spell that says you have this much range, you're like, okay, well, you can hit something nearby with that, because you've got at least a little bit of a table of what those ranges translate to. That just, I think, makes things go a little faster if you're not interested in doing a very meticulous strategy-based encounter. So I'm a big fan of the estimated relative ranges, just so that it gives you a bit of fog that you can operate under in combat that is not meticulous measuring all the time. Like I said, once in a while, I'm a big fan, but personally, I like why not simplify a little bit so that we can bend the rules when we need to serve the story. That's where I come from on distances, personally.
Perfect. I love it. Yes, and I agree. I like the distances to a degree. It has its own complications. I may need to read up more on it. Because I've tried to just kind of run it off the top of my head. I want to read up more on it from other people and other perspectives, learn about how some other people have solved some of these complications. But I think it's good for theater of the mind. Beautiful. Excellent. All right. We ready to move on?
Sure.
Kind of be pushy, but we're not even halfway through our stuff, and we're well more than halfway through our show.
That's okay. You know what that means? That means our Monday meetings about planning episode will be really easy next week, because we'll have a bunch of things to catch up on.
We already have half the episode planned.
All right, so we have our first Taming of the Brew for the episode.
It'll be our only Taming of the Brew.
It probably will. All right, so our first Taming of the Brew this week. Our Taming of the Brew this week is the Malady Codex, which was...
Oh, I love this.
I know, I'm very excited. Putting it in the chat.
So a bunch of medical students got together and wrote here's how diseases would work really in D&D. And I went, I love it.
So many of them are actually based off of existing diseases in terms of their... sometimes in terms of symptoms... often in terms of how they spread or the history of that disease. There are, so the things that they talk about when they explain some of these, they talk about the origin, how that disease came to be, and what caused it to become a threat to the world. How is its causes, how does it spread from organism to organism, and how can you contract that disease? What are the symptoms? What does it look like to the outside, and what does a patient experience when they have that disease? Diagnosis, how can you be sure someone's been infected? How do you even tell that someone's been infected? How would you go about curing it, and how other people could help you cure it? And what could you do to incorporate this disease into your campaign? They give you some plot hooks for the diseases.
So good.
Yeah, it's very thorough. I really love how well written this is. They've really put a ton of thought into it.
I love it.
Yeah. Is there any particular one that you really like? There's one that really caught me, and I talked to you about it earlier today. The one that really caught me was the Mad Mage virus. I really fucking love it. So it is listed as a non-lethal magical disease. The quote on it is, "Every wizard needs a signature world-ending thing. This nutcase decided to make viruses. I'm really worried about those who dabble in the arcane ways." So this disease... what happens is the virus is airborne. You can get it through inhaling it. If you A creature has to spend at least 24 hours with an infected creature to catch the disease, or have it bestowed upon them by the Mad Mage, who has a wand of viral infection, which there's actually a stat block for that particular item. So what happens is you go through stages. They've actually broken them down into the different stages of the diseases or viruses. So what happens in this one, the goal is to take down adventurers, not peasants. It's activated whenever a creature battles, and the virus slowly mutates as it learns to understand what your fighting style is. Nice. So when you deal damage, you proceed to the next stage, and you have to succeed on a wisdom save or take 1d8 damage of that type. So you get blowback from whatever you've done. And then if you continue to deal that kind of damage, you roll another wisdom save or you take more damage of that kind. It goes 1d8, 2d8, 3d8. And after a while, what ends up happening is if you use that type of damage to the end of the stage, an aberrant creature emerges from your body, and you have basically it spawns a monster that you then have to fight. It is pretty darn cool. You can only cure it through wish or divine intervention, but the disease is cured when the virus mutates into that aberration and it leaves your body. And so you could just let it run its course, have a cleric near you to heal you, but then you have this cool monster that you have to go fight. It's called a malady, and it's really neat. It's super cool.
That is very cool. So my enjoyment of this has come from that's great. I love the look at these supernatural and fantasy things. I loved their take on diseases in our common that actually exist in our world, like tetanus. The what's commonly referred to as lockjaw, which they talk about the common use of, and that's part of what I love is that when you're going through this, you talk about it's the medical term is tetanus, but it's commonly known as lockjaw. It's a common disease in any kingdom, and the bacterium lives in rusted metals. And then it says, though it's believed that rusted metal itself causes it. I love that they have this, here's what actually causes it, and here's what people believe. So then you get the flavor of, it's like the plague. We've got to kill all the mice and rodents because of the plague, because they're the ones that carry it. Well, they're not. It's the fleas. So, this idea that you get these misconceptions. And it talks about it says this variant of real historical lockjaw might just prove deadlier. And I'm like, that's great. And then it does a little, not disclaimer, but a little flavor. It says this disease is based on the real world version. This is over dramatized for gaming purposes. So it's a little responsible in that respect. But also it talks about how to treat it in the real world. I just love that they have all of these different, they talk, on both sides, the meta, the real world, and then also the fantasy about these diseases. And it's really neat. I thought that was a really good take on all of that.
Yeah. A really, really good example of how well they world build. One of the coolest ones in there for me is beholder spores. So,
oh God.
It's so cool. Look, and you don't understand the cool world building in this. You only find it in dungeons. It's just coating the walls. It's got little eyes in it, and it's just these spores. You can contract it by breathing it in or being exposed to it for too long. But the premise of the disease is that Biathicax, the beholder, had no purpose. He didn't know what he wanted to do with his beholder life, and so he decided to invent this spore thing. He bioengineered these spores. He did it so that he can actually psychically see through the spores, so he could create a spy network, and that's how he gained his power, was by being the thing that sees everything. Only afterwards he found out that they could be contracted and be disastrous for living creatures, and so whenever he ends up putting them in a dungeon to test them, he always makes sure that there's a bottle of the antidote somewhere in the dungeon. He's like, I didn't mean to make it deadly. Whoops, here.
Whoopsies.
Yeah.
Bit of a whoopsies.
it is purely meant to be a spy tool that he uses in order to accumulate power. But because he tested him in all these dungeons, that's why it's in all these dungeons, is because he planted them there to test it out and to mutate it so that it was more powerful. I'm like, this is so cool. It was an unintended dangerous sickness.
That is excellent. So yeah, please go check out their they're on DMs Guild. You go check them out over there. 2 medical students, it looks like, that did
Jason Bakos and Themis Paraskevas.
There you go. And they created this wonderful codex for us all to enjoy. It is not very expensive, and actually there was a whole discussion on Twitter the other day about the cost of books and gaming books and the real amount of work that goes into them and how much they should really be worth. That I'm really liking the discussion where that's going, because the amount of value we get out of these books, is so little. I mean, such a good
$3.
ratio.
$3 for the Malady Codec is fabulous. It's a really cool book.
If you use it throughout a single campaign, the campaign's 200 hours, it breaks down to pennies.
Logan.
Yes.
Fantasy Hospital.
Fantasy Hospital.
Like Grey's Anatomy, but D&D. You're in a hospital.
Scrubs. It would turn into Scrubs.
It would turn into Scrubs.
It would turn into Scrubs.
Oh, please. Mine would be Doc McStuffins. It would not be Scrubs.
All right. Anyway, so go check that out. They're real awesome. It's definitely worth the $3.
Oh my god, D&D Scrubs would be awesome. You could have a janitor that nobody else sees. You could have one of your characters being terrorized by some staff member at the hospital, and no, he doesn't exist, or he's a ghost or something.
All right.
I'm sorry, it's wonderful.
Do you want to skip around at all? Is there anything in particular you want to get to?
Let me see what our list includes. I think Power Spike is a relatively quick one in the circumstances of like the specific example we were giving. I think we've kind of resolved it.
I was just trying to skip over it again so that we go another week and see how long we can push it. But no, that's fine.
No,
let's
cover it.
So Power Spike, we were talking about 4th edition and balance and how that game is extremely well balanced up until even 20th level, where everyone feels like they have the same amount of power, the same amount of abilities, the same amount of damage dealing.
But the problem with that is
they're literally the same rolls. They, on several of the same powers and spells, it's here's a ranged attack that's 30 feet and it does 7d6 plus my strength damage. Okay, so the only variant here between your spell, and your throwing is this one thing, and there's very little other change other than it's flavored differently, and you see that a lot throughout 4th edition, and that was a problem that a lot of people had with it. It was great for people who came from an MMO, and came from gaming, computer gaming or console gaming, because they only saw the flavor side of it, and they're like, the rest of it, the mechanics are what I struggled with before, or power creep or things like that. But we were talking about specifically, what I love is that the game is not perfectly balanced. The fact that the barbarians early on are the power hitters, but in the end it's the wizards, and the utility classes in between, are always useful, but in different ways. And this idea that if everything is balanced, then nobody has a real good chance of shining in a moment and being really, really, especially in combat specifically, having those moments of being able to really stand out. It becomes all about who gets that final blow or who gets whatever. So that's why I love that D&D isn't balanced, and that was just something I kind of wanted about.
And a way to phrase that, I think, to explain it a little better, that imbalance is not, 5e especially, you can really lean into the world building and the experience of character interaction and the varied ways that you can make challenges. It's not just combat. That you can find other things that your character excels at, and you can find other things that your character finds more important than being the most powerful fighter on the field. When you have a system that is based purely, when success is defined purely by how much damage you do on the field, it can feel a little unfair. But the goal there is to have a game or a campaign, part of your job as a DM is to make sure all your characters feel like they're getting those times to shine, and it doesn't always have to be in combat. Mad Rogue asks, not balanced in what sense? Not balanced in the sense of specifically combat is the most obvious example, but you look at the idea that like Logan said, a barbarian is going to do a ton of damage. They're designed to be these heavy hitters. They will at the front end of the game really make an impact on the battlefield. They will do a lot of damage because they're like, what? You're throwing a greatsword around. It's a D12. You could really do some huge damage hits.
Stay in combat for round after round after round.
Right, and then you've got the little squishy wizards that are like, firebolt, okay, just don't hit me, don't touch me. And then you have, later down the road, the wizard's going to be able to cast something that literally disintegrates things. Or be able to cast Power Word Kill. Like, just, there are the exponential growth in arcane knowledge that a wizard accumulates over the course of the game. They learn how to wield reality, whereas the barbarian's just like, fuck yeah, I got a bigger axe.
I can swing the sword better, yeah. And it does balance out over particular types of campaigns. If you are the type of campaign that runs like the way that Mike Merles and others in WotC have said, like this idea that, you're supposed to have so many encounters a day before you take a rest, 4 to 8 or 6 or whatever it is encounters a day, it might balance out because the barbarian could keep hitting, but the wizard's going to run out of spells. But unfortunately, not every game is run like that. So very often you run into situational reasons where, like in our West Marches campaign, every day is a game. Every game is a day. So wizards don't run out of spells in my game usually. They don't run short on spells because there's no continuation of the story because they're at home. And that's probably not going to change for this campaign. So you've got Code of Cold, a spell that does 10d8d6, 10d6, or Fireball, which does 10d6, or you can cast it at 8th level and be doing almost 20d6 of damage to literally 30 people. It is an incredible amount of damage. And then you've got somebody like the Rogue. The Rogue sits there and does, I can do one attack really well. If I miss that attack, though, I don't get a second chance, or I might have an offhand or something.
Yeah.
Whereas
you got to make that count.
You've got barbarians who are going to be able to hit 3 or 4 times at max level and be doing decent damage. And anytime they crit, they're coming close to what the rogue can do with their damage. So
the conversation that Logan and I got into, I will air my dirty laundry. The reason that Logan and I got into this conversation was because we have paladins in our party, and our paladins are just fucking shit up whenever Logan brings in an undead character, and obviously paladins shine when undead are involved. They get to do massive amounts of
90% of bad guys in typical D&D campaigns.
Right. So what I was experiencing as a barbarian, as both a barbarian and a barbarian who occasionally has really rough sessions in terms of dice rolls, it sometimes felt like I was just going dink, 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 and then everybody else was doing massive amounts of damage. So I felt very underpowered. We got into this conversation of the balance of a barbarian versus a paladin. That was where this conversation had started.
As a side note, you also went with a very utility version of the barbarian. You
correct
can give things to your allies, and
yes.
You didn't take Great Weapon Master. You went with grappling. Nobody can grapple like you do. No one grapples like Syl.
No one grapples like Syl. Makes pain out of apples like Syl. I don't know. I was trying to rhyme.
But yeah, paladins have a tendency to shine a lot because they have the reason. Part of the reason why paladins shine so much is they get to choose when they use their big hit. They get to choose when that big hit comes. So they get to wait for those moments when they do that critical hit and then spend their big hit. They don't have to decide to do that in advance. Whereas like the sneak attacking rogue, it's just on the first attack they hit with, I believe. I don't think they get to choose.
Right.
They might.
And the barbarian has to wait for a crit. And the barbarian has to wait for their crit on their to actually be able to do something that's impressive. And even beyond that, you're at the mercy of the dice for when that actually might happen. So Logan and I talked out a lot. We did a lot of like number crunching just to see what was going on. And And we came to a conclusion that it's actually not that bad. It's just situational. It's just the fact that barbarians have a slightly more narrow situation that they start actually doing damage in a very significant way. If you're not rolling really, really awesome throughout the game. But then, one way we sort of worked around it was if we see that, like, for example, I had a tendency of not being super impressive with my damage rolls on a consistent basis, Logan felt like it was fair to give me the option to purchase a weapon that gave me 19-20 crit rolls. So I'm Logan, by the way, I kind of want to call that like the great sword of the champion, because we are literally stealing that champion ability. I actually want to check what the Barbarians 19-20 is called, because I just want to borrow it. I just want to give it a flavor that implies that's where that came from. But yeah, the Jay makes a very good point. Yeah. And my slight gripe was, yes, Barbarians are freaking amazing tanks. I was running into a problem where people liked my character too much and wouldn't let me tank.
Yeah. But also,
they would step in front of me, and it's like, what are you doing?
Self-heal like nobody's business.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they have the ability to decide if they want to use their spells to heal or if they want to use their spells to do damage. Whereas other classes don't get that. They have a lot of utility with paladins. But yeah, so that's
that. Jay has. Those are all fair, Jay. It might have been an in the moment complaint from
paladins
me,
are
and
tanks.
Yeah.
But so are, barbarians are tanks, but so are paladins, and that's but they're just different things.
But this wasn't
do.
Right, and so Logan and I talked this out. This was a communication moment. This was whether or not the math balances. That's the thing. Math doesn't care about your feelings, and math does not always express what the feel of the game is. And because your player perception is such a more palpable aspect of your game than what the math actually is, you really need to figure out how to balance player expectations and experience with what is objectively happening. Because you can say all day, every day, well, you feel that way, yeah, but you're wrong. That's not really going to engender any sort of trust between you and your DM. You got to figure out how to work with the player. Like, you want to try to give them a bit of a reality check, but then also understand where they're coming from emotionally and work with both. There's a lot of like interpersonal skills that you need
but I will
as a
also
DM.
say that there have been several. Yeah, there's quite a lot. I will also say that there is, for going back to the thing, a good point that was brought up.
Yeah.
In one of the chats I was reading was that. And this has happened to Soxy quite often. What she did is completely wasteful. Spending a 4th level spell slot in a particular moment to do 100 and whatever critical damage, the monster needed like 7. She completely wasted that 4th level spell. It was not needed. So that can happen as well, where these moments where you spend those resources and you get to use them up. So
Sure. So yeah, that was a pretty general. That was an example of a topic that came up because Logan and I were literally discussing the game and thought that there might be people that experience that too. It might sound a little bit like griping and complaining, but I think that there's something to be said for that was an experience that I was having. Logan and I talked about it. We figured out a small, not game breaking benefit that could potentially help, salve that wound a little bit, that bitterness. And I'm completely happy with the outcome of that conversation we had. I don't feel like I'm breaking the game or shoving the spotlight on me. It just felt like I have slightly more opportunity to have a more impressive moment, which, they're power fantasies. You want to try to...
Absolutely. Now, have you taken that axe last night?
No, Mike, Syl does not hate Lark. She just gets frustrated when people stand in front of her that can't handle damage like Lark can. But yeah, so that, I think this at least makes me a little more aware of the fact that there are a lot of topics, a lot of maybe slightly esoteric topics that we can discuss on this show that
yes,
are about little moments, the things that are unique about playing RPGs.
Yeah. Let's do Too Cool for Chul real quick, and then
sure. I'm curious about your thoughts about that.
So Too Cool for Chul, I was reading. I do a lot of reading. I was reading a lot of mostly blog posts, or sorry, not blog posts, mostly threads. I was reading about it was DMs only, and DM was like, how would you handle the situation? Would you allow a player to pull out a torch, light it in a campfire, and then throw it all in one round? And my initial thought was, hell yeah, that's badass. I love it. I don't know why they're throwing a torch. Maybe they're trying to light some oil, or maybe they're just like, get out of here. You don't like fire, right? You're a giant spider. I don't know. I don't care what it is. To me, that sounds completely reasonable. Interacting with an object, draw it, is free as part of any other action. The action is going to be to throw it. The only thing you're doing is you're kind of angling it down towards the fire to light it first. I don't have a problem with that. It seems like a fairly reasonable thing. As long as you're next to the fire, can get to it within a move. It seemed very reasonable, but it seemed to divide this chat in this idea that lighting a torch is considered an action. I'm like, sure, if you've got to you pull out your flint and your steel, yes, lighting a torch is an action. Holding it over the fire for a couple of seconds, maybe it's not enough. So you roll, okay, 50% chance it lights, 50% chance it doesn't. Either way, you're throwing it because you have to think it lights, you have to hope it lights. But maybe I would do that. But and this was just talking about the rule of cool, or the rule of Chul. The rule of cool is, if it's cool, let it happen. Especially if it's not that big of a deal. And that doesn't seem like that big of a deal, especially if they're like, let's say they're throwing it to light some oil on fire. Make them roll to hit. So take that as the point where you take your possibility, your randomness. But I was like, absolutely, pull that out, light the fire, chuck it. Who cares? Seems like a cool moment if it's described well, and especially if the player is taking very little time on their turn to tell me they're going to do that. I am very more likely to let that happen. But I thought that was a really cool, just a visual, like, I've got a torch, pull that out of my pack, hold it over the light, and just chuck it. Seems like one fluid motion to me. Seems like it'd be very easy to do. I wouldn't have a problem with that personally.
By the way, before we leave, I just wanted to say one more thing about the Malady Codex. If you get the Malady Codex on DM's Guild, it doesn't just come with the guide to the diseases. It comes with a couple of supplemental appendix items, which includes some stuff about like how to build your own. So 2 of the tables that it includes are how basic 5e health and healing magic will affect how will they cure certain maladies. So it's a nice little rundown of here's all the things that can heal something, and here are the kind of things that are immune or resistant, or the stuff that can be cured. Talks about the different stages that can be cured, like something might cure all stages or just one stage of the disease. It might like back roll it. And then the other thing it provides is a sort of timeline of progression. If you want to build your own disease, here's a baseline of how they did theirs, and it's just a go through the stages, and it'll show you how to build the damage it does or the effects it has. So there's some neat little DIY stuff if you want to build your own diseases based on their model. So not just a book, there's some other stuff in there too. That's all I wanted to say. We had like a minute. I wanted to like sneak that in real quick.
I understand.
Awesome.
Do you have any comments on the
not
rule of Chul?
Not really. I think I'm cool with the rule of Chul.
All right. Alrighty. Well, there is that.
That's our first segment for today. Our second segment's coming in an hour?
1 hour. I'm hoping I'll have everything together. I've got to rebuild a whole new scene. It's going to be pretty minimal, pretty limited. It may not have a lot of fanciness to it. It is just us kind of laying things out. It might be a little rough. And I still have to go get some food too, and make sure I get some lunch so I'm not starving. And then we have to get set up and figure out what the hell we're going to talk about. So that's that. So we'll be back in 1 hour to do another quick 1 hour show of us world building for Countless Heroes today, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit about what we're going to do, but if you don't really care what we're doing and you just want to come hang out with us an hour, and you'll find out what we'll do.
Come and see us, and we'll chat a lot, and we might even, if people want to help us world build, I take audience and player suggestions all the time. It's going to be very interactive. Eventually, we'll probably have the chat involved.
Sure. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. you want to cue up dance party just to round it out?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Alrighty, everybody. Thank you once again so kindly for joining us for Countless Hero. For Discover RPG. I said,
oh, yeah, that one.
Thank you all for joining us for Discover RPG. We have had such a wonderful time chatting D&D and RPG with you. And Gabby's not here to note that Muppet Walk, so I'm not going to tell her.
It doesn't count. This isn't Countless Heroes.
That's true. Join us in an hour for our World Anvil stream, or next Wednesday for another episode of Discover RPG. You can find us on Twitter at Discover RPG Show. We will be sending out something on our Twitter about our dice giveaway, so please keep an eye on it. And hopefully that blog post will be up and our first video will be out by then. Yes, and we will certainly be letting you guys know. And we
yes, follow us on Twitter.
Yes, please. And if you have any questions for us, anything like that, you can tweet at us at that address at Discover RPG Show. You can use our hashtag Discover RPG. You can reach us on We Are Nerdsmiths Twitter. You can go join our Discord chat and hang out with us there.
Tweet out and at us. Anybody who adds us this month will be entered in to win that gorgeous set of dice. Any metal set of dice they want from Die Hard Dice.
You heard it here first. We're gonna send it out on Twitter, but you'll know now to start.
You'll know. Oh, you know. Yeah.
All right, and then
guys, thank you so much.
Be good to each other, and we are very fond of you. Thank you.
We really are. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.